Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Welcome back to La Vie Creative, guys. Today's episode is deeply moving. I'm sitting down with Barry Hoffner. He's a writer, a traveler, and storyteller whose life took a profound turn when he lost his wife. In the face of that kind of grief, Barry chose not to retreat from the world, but to step fully into it. What follows is both extraordinary and deeply human. He travels to every country in the world and has written a book about it. So welcome to the show, Barry.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here, Crystal.
It's great to have you here. You released a new book, but you've done so many things. And I always like to go back to people's connection to Paris to start. So you were in Paris in the 80s. Tell us more about that time in your life.
Yeah, sure. So let's see. I was in between my 2 years of business school at Columbia. This was in 83, 84, before starting an internship with a company I finally worked for, which was JP Morgan. And I had a month before my training program. So I went to Paris, just spent a month there, sort of fell in love. I walked by Place Vendôme and saw JP Morgan's office right there. And I said, that's what I want to do. And so when I finally started my full-time job in 85, I was bugging my boss, who just happened to be French, that I want to go to Paris. I want to go to Paris. And finally, like, that dream came true in 1987. I worked there for, sadly, only a year and a half, but my boss there got transferred to Japan and kind of told me I had to go with him. My career basically started in Paris.
Wow. Oh my gosh. But that's okay that you had to go to Japan. That seems pretty fun too.
It's tough to leave Paris at the age of 27 after you've just gotten settled. You're speaking French, you're having friends, you're traveling around, you're living the life. Yeah. But anyways, It was really good. It was the start of a run of about 16 years straight through living overseas in a number of different countries.
Yeah, it sounds like an incredible job. And your new book is, it talks a lot about travel. You've been to 193 countries now. But I want to go back to what inspired the book. You suffered from profound loss. You lost your wife. Talk a little bit about what happened and what inspired the book.
Yeah. So, travel was always a big part of my life. It happened more by coincidence when I was 18, graduating from high school. A friend of mine and I decided we'd saved our money. We were going to take a trip. I wanted to go to Hawaii. He wanted to go to Europe backpacking, and we flipped a coin. He won. And so I say that coin flip changed my life. So, I moved around a lot. Like I said, travel was a big part of my life. And we lived for 16 years overseas. And then we moved back to where I am at right now in Northern California, Sausalito, California, near San Francisco. And as we were entering our empty nesting years, my boys, one of them in college, the other on a gap year in Spain, and my late wife and I had planned our first trip. She was going off to Africa. She was a wildlife biologist. And I was meeting her 2 weeks later. And it was in a Dubai airport hotel, about to meet her the next day, that I had learned that she had been sadly killed by an elephant in Botswana. And that launched me into a very difficult period of my life. I moved away from home just to be with my older son, who was in Georgetown in Washington, D.C. then. And after a period of time, I call it stepping out of my life, I decided I needed to just take a trip somewhere and get my head back together. And because of that trip and coming back from that, realizing that that was very good for me and for my mental health, I just fell into this idea to travel to every country in the world.
That's incredible. And I mean, I can't imagine losing your wife and like just getting ready to be empty nesters and then your whole life changes. And I think that what you're saying about travel being healing is, very true for many people. And you write that some journeys choose us. When did you feel the first call to travel after that first trip? Were you like, okay, I've started this, I want to keep going, I want to do all the countries?
Yeah, it was a good question. So what happened was I had taken that trip to, it happened to be in Central Asia to Tajikistan to run a half marathon, and I came back from that kind of with my head turned a little bit, feeling like this was very healing. And so I kind of just was, and I realized I'm fortunate to be able to do that. Other people just have to go right back to work after loss, and that would have been very difficult for me. So I was just taking kind of one trip at a time. And then COVID hit. My boys came back home. I was grounded for a while. And it was during that time I had met this young Spaniard who had been to every country in the world. And I didn't even know that existed. I felt like an imposter because I didn't even know there were 193 UN member countries. But that kind of clicked a light bulb in me, and I decided that's what I needed to do. And I really just, started out that I had sort of this goal, but it wasn't really the goal that I was finding was the most compelling thing. I'm sure I was seeing some amazing landscapes and traveling to exotic places, but it was really in meeting people and feeling like a part of something bigger that I found really healing. It was that kind of idea of connection. And I set out really more as an escape and in search of countries, but what I really found were people.
I always say that about travel, that's actually my favorite part is the people you meet along the journey. And it sounds like it was the same for you, how they open your mind and how you meet some really funny characters.
Yeah, and I would say, like, for me, the shock and tragedy of my loss really opened me up, sensitized me for wanting something deeper. I mean, I'd done a lot of travel, and I would say in the past it was more for a sense of adventure. But as I was traveling, I was finding for me it was more this feeling of connection to people, these people to people contacts that I just found very healing. And so at about 1 year into that journey, that was a year after, I would say like around 2022, that I realized there was a story I wanted to write. And it wasn't just a travel log, but it was a story about collecting stories of people that I encountered along the way that I found this source of healing from.
And did you ever feel like the strangers you met were mirroring your own healing?
I just kept running into people and a number of them who had had significant loss, and I felt oftentimes this like incredible bond with them, and a lot of them, and their stories are in the book. But you just see that losses. You realize it's just like loss is part of our human experience. We can't disengage sort of loss and tragedy from all the amazing things that happen in our life. And it doesn't mean that you don't feel sad or you don't grieve or you don't want to continue to honor this person, but that those two elements they just go together. Sadly, it's part of life, and you just learn to adjust with that.
And the title belonging to the world is so powerful. What does belonging mean to you now?
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up in a family that was, I guess, not. My mom divorced my dad when I was about 7 years old. She worked a lot. She wasn't home. She's a great mom. She passed away about a year ago at the age of 104. Um,
Wow,
she
that's
was
amazing.
actually born in Baghdad in Iraq, and so I'm really a first generation American. But home wasn't really like this sort of typical family home for me. And then when I met Jackie, she was very centered around family and home. She created a home really for me, and then for my boys as well. And when that was shattered, I was lost. I was really like untethered. Sure, we have a lot of friends here in Sausalito and stuff like that, but I just felt this like shattering of a sense of like where I belong. And as I started traveling, I was just meeting these kindred travelers who have the same open-minded view of the world, and then also these people-to-people contacts of even in some of like what are considered the world's most dangerous places, that I just found this sense of like a belonging to this world. And I know it may sound kind of funny for some people, but like when I look on a map and I see a country or lines, I don't see lines. I see like the impressions I've had, real impressions, my impressions of people that I've met along the way. And I just find that a sense of belonging to something bigger than I am.
I love that. And like you talked about briefly, like you've met people in places many would consider dangerous or unfamiliar. What surprised you most about humanity?
I think I guess like I distill it in this idea that you oftentimes get what you're looking for. And yes, like if you want to read the headlines about a certain country, like I just wrote an essay that came out in People magazine about Iran, for example. And obviously now, like when we look at the headlines, we look at war and bombing and the mining of the Strait of Hormuz, et cetera. But like when I think of Iran, I think of the people that I met there and the conversations I had, and I have a different impression, and I'm glad I have that impression because it's a nicer impression than we often see in the headlines. And so that really is what informs sort of my view of the world, more than just like reading the headlines, to really like challenge my own narratives. And I called it at one point like being my own journalist. Like I really want to know, like I'm not saying what I see or experience is the ultimate truth, but it's a lot closer to the ultimate truth than just reading something in the headlines. And I understand like people don't have the opportunity to travel to those places. I just feel fortunate that like again, when we see the headlines of some place in the news that's considered dangerous, and sure, like I'm sure objectively it's more dangerous than when I live, but I see people and I remember those impressions that I've had of those travels in those places.
Of course. And was there a specific encounter that deeply shifted your perspective on connection or belonging?
Yeah, for sure. So, my first few trips when I decided to kind of take on this quest to go to every country in the world, which started around September 2021, were definitely like exotic countries, but not objectively dangerous, like Uganda, Rwanda, Saudi Arabia. But I also realized like if I was really going to do this, I had to travel to places where the world warned me not to go, kind of places that people considered very dangerous. And so I chose this sort of 6 week trip to the Middle East to visit 5 new countries that I hadn't been. And the cornerstone of that trip was to go to Iraq. And to be in Baghdad for me was a special experience. As I mentioned, my mom was born in Baghdad, although we're Iraqi Jews. And I really didn't, I had an impression growing up of sort of these two cultures conflicting. And so it was about testing that narrative for me. And I was thinking, like, before I left for Baghdad, a lot of my view of my identity is shaped around that. And what would happen if I wasn't received well? And so I remember, like, traveling through Najaf and Karbala and Babylon, visiting these places, going through these police checkpoints, these military checkpoints. And oftentimes I would be asked, why are you here? And I would say, well, my mom was born in Iraq. And then kind of the next question would be, are you Muslim? So we hit this checkpoint and I did this standard like greeting in Arabic, wassalamu alaikum. And the officer sort of motioned me to come with him with my passport into this office. And this Iraqi military guy with this rifle slung over his shoulder. So, the tradition, why are you here and why do you speak some Arabic? And I sort of looked at him. I thought, what should I tell him the truth? And I just looked him in the eye and I said, well, my mom was born here. And he said, are you Muslim? I said, no, I'm Jewish. And he looked at me and he said, well, your mother was born here. And this was her home. That makes it your home. And welcome to Iraq. And
Wow.
it's kind of like realized like at that point I found acceptance in a place that was very important to me. And I knew if I could find acceptance there, I could find that all over the world and even in some of the world's most considered dangerous places.
That's incredible. I mean, that's not the response you expect, like from a soldier in a place like that. So, yeah, I could see how that really changes your perspective on, belonging. And did visiting every country make you feel more rooted or more free?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what it does is it pushes your boundaries of places you'd have never considered visiting, like the Afghanistan a year after the Taliban took over, and objectively, I should have been scared traveling through and sort of these checkpoints by the Taliban. And of course, like I don't condone anything they do. But on the other hand, I was just very excited and interested to see this like completely different culture in in a far off place I had only like seen in the headlines. And I just really got, I mean, maybe I got really lucky. Like as I say in my book, I wish I had stories to tell of harrowing escapes, uh, which may make my book more interesting, but I just don't. I mean, I had, a few challenges along the way, but against that, I had so many welcoming encounters that that's my lived experience. And I'm not saying that's the same for everybody, but it's my lived experience.
Did you have any experiences where you were like, wow, I'm in danger? Or in general, it was just like, hey, come on in?
Yeah, I did have one or two of those, but like I said, I measure that against, I guess it's just the way the mind works. Like when people ask me about my travels, they ask, "Well, do you, as you asked, which I totally understand." Um, of course, like I had a few, maybe more challenging encounters, but against that, I probably had 1,000 good ones. And so, like when I add up the balance sheet, there it definitely verges on the, very positive experiences traveling. I mean, you can't travel to all these places and not experience a few challenges here and there. That's part of the gig in a way, but nothing that I was I was terrified or maybe want to think about changing course.
Was there anywhere that you felt most at home?
That's a good question. I guess the biggest change in my narrative for me was, to be honest, the Middle East. A place that had been marked by wars, and in my mind, in headlines of sort of those people being the other. But on the other hand, like my experience was just incredibly hospitable people. I find like everywhere in the world, people just they want dignity, particularly when you come from, let's say, a materially more prosperous country. And if you meet them with that, you'll get some incredibly rich encounters, and that's what I had. I mean, I'm not saying like I would want to live my whole life in some of those countries, but like when I think of my experiences in Iraq or in Jordan or in Saudi, and just like the incredible hospitality of people welcoming me, it was definitely a positive experience. I mean, I still call like where I live my favorite place, Sausalito. And when people ask me what are my favorite countries, I say Italy and Japan. But when people ask me what are my best experiences, they're usually places like Syria or Jordan, where my perception was just far off. My expectation was far off with the reality that I encountered in some of those countries.
Yeah, I think that's what makes travel sometimes more special is the places that not many people go because there's not many tourists there. So I feel like you have like a real experience than people just trying to sell you stuff, or you've seen it so much on the internet that it's like, okay, is this like Disney World? I mean, I haven't gone anywhere like you've gone, but just even going to Algeria, I had so many expectations and then I was just shocked at how great it was, like, so I think people can really surprise you. Like you said, the humanity and, how we have these misconceptions.
Yeah, very very much so. And like my favorite experience of travel was Syria, and it's Syria for me was framed by Assad, the war criminal, or the refugees streaming across Europe. But in reality, like I never really thought about the people who had to stay through that and live through that, and they were basically shut off from the world, not just from the Western world, but the Arab League kicked them out for a decade. And just for them, I encountered it so many times, like the welcoming and hospitality to me, just seeing me as a sign that their country was coming back to life, to see somebody who was interested enough to go and visit and to meet them on their own, on their own in their own place.
Yeah, I think we have to understand that the people living in these countries are not the leaders. Like they're different people. And after seeing the entire world, what do you wish more people understood about it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, like just being able to, I realized like I had a special opportunity to be able to go to all these countries. And I would say two things. One, there's so many countries that I went to that I would have never gone if I didn't have this goal of going to every country. So many countries that I just never even really thought of, but in almost every single one, I would have a special experience. And it just led me to think like, I can really almost go anywhere and find a good experience out of it because that's what I'm looking for. And then the second thing is like definitely pushing my travel boundaries, uh, going a little bit beyond my comfort zone is where some of my best experiences happened. And so I guess that's what I would say is like everyone has their own sort of level of comfort, but I think sometimes if you push that a little bit, it can unlock some incredibly rich experiences.
Yeah, I completely agree. And did this journey change how you see fear?
Yeah, no question. You realize fear mostly is a construct in your brain. And when you challenge it and overcome it, it just opens up a whole new world for you. And I just remember like getting on the plane from Dubai to Kabul in Afghanistan, kind of questioning, like, should I really be doing this? And then once I was there, it was just so foreign and exciting. And I was so eager to just experience it and I kind of came back from that trip, and that's when I decided to write the book, saying, you know what, I think I can go just about anywhere. I'm not going to like do something stupid and insert myself into an active war zone, but that I could go almost anywhere. This world is open to me, and that gives me a sense that the world is much smaller, and I really feel like being part of planet Earth is not like being part of the universe, which is so vast and unknown, but I feel like it's known to me now.
I love that. Yeah, that's really beautiful. And how do you carry Jackie with you now?
Well, in a number of ways, there were a number of places that we'd wanted to go together. One is Iran. She had a lot of Persian friends when she was at university in California, so that was a special trip. I write about that in that People magazine article. Also, her favorite animal that she never got to see were lemurs, and so going to Madagascar, the only place in the world where you could see lemurs, was sort of a testament to her. But in addition, I have a foundation. I've been doing humanitarian work in West Africa since 2010. We started just by building schools in villages outside of Timbuktu. And then when we lost Jackie, end of 2017, started a new program in her name called Bourse Jackie, the Jackie Scholarship, and that has grown significantly. We provide both university English scholarships, English language acquisition, and speaking skills to women all across West Africa. We have three different programs run by three dynamic program directors, local women in those countries. I just got back from one of our big events. And the trademark logo for Borscht Jackie is the sunflower. All the girls wear this like sunflower on their t-shirts. And Jackie had a sunflower tattooed on her arm. And so for me, that's a good way of continuing to honor Jackie, but also like help people along the way doing it. And I call that like purposeful travel.
I think that's a great way to honor her and let her memory live on. I think that's beautiful. And many of our listeners are creatives or people searching for purpose. What would you say to someone feeling stuck in grief or disconnection?
Yeah, I have this saying that I like to use where like loss really did break me, particularly in the way we lost Jackie and the shock of it. But it was courage to move that like started to open the door. But at the end of the day, it was like this feeling of connection with something bigger than myself, like reaching out to connect again with the world after this loss, where oftentimes you just want to be by yourself. That was healing for me. And I never had. I know this is a show that caters to creative people. I never saw myself as somebody creative, lacking any kind of like music ability or drawing ability, etc. But I found a way to be creative in telling stories. Somehow that just resonated with me, like telling people stories. And that's why I wrote the book. I never really considered myself like a writer, but there was a calling to use that source of creativity that I didn't think I had to tell people stories. And those stories are in my book, Belonging to the World.
And where can people pick up the book?
Sure. I mean, it's available on all online outlets, whether it's Amazon or anyone else. An extra carrot for that book is that 100% of the proceeds go to scholarships for women in West Africa in Jackie's name, our Bourse Jackie Scholarship. So you're also doing good, hopefully learning a little bit about the world and reading a story of like a love, loss, and healing through connection. A different side of the world than you'll see by reading the headlines.
Yeah, I think we could all use a little bit more of that right now with everything going on in the world.
Yeah, for sure.
And what role did curiosity and even play have in your journey back to life?
Yeah, it was as I mentioned, when I started traveling, it was really kind of more of an escape, and then kind of with this goal, I was searching for countries, but I just became curious about people in like a new way, and that curiosity opened up like the stories of people, which I just found very very fulfilling, like to hear other people's stories of resilience or what they've overcome or the joys in their life. And it just led me to have this like way of living of just being a little bit more curious about people, not just for the sake of curiosity, but generally that curiosity unlocks a deeper experience, whether it's a deeper conversation with somebody or whatever.
Yeah, I think we should all be a little more curious about each other. I think we're stuck in our screens, we're stuck in the news, and it's time to get back to actually talking to each other. And what does a creative life mean to you now?
You know, I guess what I realized through this journey is I just really like telling people stories. I just find them interesting and packaging them in a way that that makes it interesting and relating it to my own life and hopefully relating it to others' lives. So, I started a Substack where I write about some of my travels, but in a lens of telling stories of people. And that's what I look for these days when I'm traveling, even if it's just locally. I'm looking to unlock that story which speaks to me, and I sort of write about it in a way that I think helps people relate that to their own lives.
Well, I think that's a beautiful note to end on. And where can people connect with you, check out your Substack, and learn more?
Yeah, sure. So Substack, you just enter my name, Barry Hoffner. It's a free Substack, and I generally try to write something once a month or so. I'm also on Instagram, Barry H99, Barry H99. And then the best would be to check out my website, www.belongingtotheworld.com. Unfortunately, it's very expensive to print a color book. And so there are a lot of photos of my travels and of people that I met along the way on that website. And they can also learn more about our Bourse Jackie scholarship programs for women in West Africa.
Incredible. Well, we'll share all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much for sharing your story today, and I can't wait to see what you'll do next.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.